I think the thing that's kind of sets David Cronenberg apart, there's a number of things. I mean, the idea of sort of the singular kind of vision that he has brought to the films, I think makes them unique. You know, the idea that the horror actually lives within each of us, you know, is not something that's completely unique to Cronenberg, but it's something certainly that he's explored, I think, more than any other filmmaker, certainly in Canada.
He had a vision, and it's consistent through all his films. You can see it. There's similarities between each one. He had, you know, things, I'll call them bugaboos for lack of a better term, but there are things that he wanted to explore in every one of them, and it comes out again and again. And, you know, after a while, it's a body of work, and people look at it and say, oh, this guy's different.
Why not breed a parasite that can do something useful? Are you following me?
Oh, no, I am.
They Came From Within is the American title for Shivers, which is the first David Cronenberg feature film. And it kind of tickles me to think of these American producers getting this film. They've bought it, you know, they've bought this film called Shivers. They watch it and they go, okay, we got to retitle this because it's not drive-in enough. And the title they came up with was They Came From Within, which is their, you know, it's what they think the movie's about, I guess, the things coming from within. They were probably thinking in literal terms, but if you just scratch a little bit deeper, you can see that it applies to an awful lot of Canadian movies. Everything comes from within, right? It's not space aliens. The horror comes from within something, usually from within us, people.
Shivers from frame one to the final frame is one big freak out for me. I had nightmares after I saw that the first time, and then I waited a long time before I could watch it again. And to me, that's the measure of an effective horror film, when it really grabs you deep down.
Cronenberg is unquestionably a masterful filmmaker, but he doesn't really start to earn a kind of a prestige reputation in Canada until he's moved away from horror films. It's from Dead Ringers on that Cronenberg begins to be accepted in Canada as the valuable contributor to our cultural life. He has always been, ever since he made Shivers. But it's not until he moves out of that realm of gore and shocks that we're willing to say, yes, you're an artist.
Hobbes believed that man is an animal that thinks too much. So what he came up with to help our guts along was a parasite, a combination of aphrodisiac and venereal disease that will hopefully turn the world into one beautiful, mindless orgy.
There is a segment, I think, of the population that looks at horror films the way they look at pornography.
The middlebrow sensibility does not like horror movies. It has never really liked horror movies.
Generally, the reason I think that Canadian horror doesn't get a lot of respect is because it's being funded by taxpayers, and too often films have been held up and saying, you know, look what the government's doing with your money. And that's obviously the case with David Cronenberg's film Shivers.
Robert Fulford wrote this article basically saying that, you know, all your money, the Canadian taxpayers' money, is being channeled into this quasi-pornography.
I think the moment in where I really realized there was somebody here who was doing something really different, and it also was just kind of like so disturbing to me. It's a surgery scene where one of the surgeons, having unwittingly contracted the disease, which is turning people into blood-sucking maniacs, first kind of shows that he's lost his mind and developed a kind of a bloodlust. All I'll say is that it involves a scalpel.
I need something to cut with, Dr. Rushton.
Damn!
I was talking actually to David Cronenberg a couple of weeks ago about Rabid, and he said that part of making a horror film is trying to find an image which sort of sums up what the film is about. And if you can find that image, then you have yourself a very strong, you know, powerful film.
Was that Rose?
No, it's not Rose.
In Rabid, he said it was the image of the girl in the refrigerator who's dead, and they used in the poster.
That movie just struck me as just being kind of just nasty, a little nasty spirited thing that was, you know, that has stayed with me. That just feeling of kind of ick has just kind of stayed with me for years after saying that.
He shot a lot of his films in daylight. He shot a lot of his films in really kind of like cold clinical institutions like, you know, apartment buildings and hospitals and things like that. So his films had a very different look to them. But I think, you know, the idea was that he saw horror as being something that was viral, right? He didn't see it as people coming back from the dead. He didn't see it as a result of violating old Indian burial grounds, right, or anything like that. What he tended to see horror was as something viral. So it grew out of something that seemed to be created by humankind. Cronenberg's horror, really, as weird as it was, always seemed to come out of familiar, recognizable, everyday situations.
He gets you where you live. He gets you in your head, and he gets you in your heart. He gets you with what it is you think is important, and then he starts to tear away at it.
And look! It's sick on you.
The Brood, I think, is David Cronenberg's scariest horror movie, and it has a moment, or rather a whole scene where the little, you know, gremlin people in their snowsuits are attacking an old lady in her kitchen. There's a single shot where she looks up, she comes into her kitchen, and she turns around and looks up, and the camera tilts up a bit, and you see this little snowsuit creature standing on top of the cupboards, and it leaps on her with this horrifying cry. I think that's probably the pants-crappingest moment of in Canadian film history.
Oh my God! I think what you see in movies like Scanners and Videodrome is Cronenberg really kind of moving away from the literal kind of roots in horror, literally the kind of viral roots, into a more conceptual kind of horror, right? And really the sense of horror moves from, you know, other parts of the body into the brain. By the time you get to Videodrome and Scanners, it really is about something going on inside your psyche. And the amazing thing about Videodrome, which I think is one of the most remarkable films, you know, ever that Canada has ever produced, is it's really a movie in which you simply can't trust what you're watching.
To me, that's what Cronenberg is the master at. He is the undisputed champion of just messing up your brain for good.
Go ahead, take a look.
Well, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong in there.
Well, you know what they say. Cold hands, warm heart.
A lot of critics, you know, dismiss horror in general, and outright even. And that's because people usually judge a genre by its lowest common denominator. So when people think horror genre, oh, I know the horror genre. That's Freddy Krueger, and that's Jason, and that's Chucky, and that's, you know, all of these stereotypical slashers, you know, and blood and guts and things like that. And that's how they're judging it. It's like judging science fiction by Star Wars and Star Trek. You know, that